All right, today is May 26, 2026. This is a policy session, and the first thing I want to do is kick it off to Gary.
Yes, and I'll do roll call like we do for a policy session. Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner West is somewhere. He'll be here shortly. So you asked for this session last week, a 30-minute or less session, Commissioner. This is Public Safety Levy Next Steps, to talk about what to do next after the voters made a pretty resounding decision at the polls last week. So Tony Marinick from the County Administrator's Office will give a quick recap of what you talked about previously, and then Sheriff Brandenburg is here with her team to give some ideas, and then really want to hear what would you like to talk about next. We have scheduled this for next Tuesday as well at Issues for a further conversation. We'd like to know what data you'd like for us to collect before that. So if we'll start with Tony, please, and then the Sheriff. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chair Roberts, Tony Marinick, Policy Advisor in the Office of County Administration. I will not go through all 56 pages of this presentation, but I will walk you through how we got to where we are. One is we started with a conversation in December of 2025 evaluating polling data, and from that polling data, we worked forward from there with a series of levy options. Those four options were narrowed down to two. Those two options were narrowed down to one. That one option was taken to the voters. At present, it is unlikely that that will succeed. At this point, Commissioners, we have a pile of information, but we'd like to know if there's any more information that could be of assistance to you in what to do next. The board has a number of options before it, either referring something to the November ballot, choosing to let the levy expire and wrap up operations, or, I mean, those really are the two core options, but certainly the board could pursue any direction it felt like. And with that, that's the end of my comments.
All right, then if we could let Sheriff Brandenburg and her team talk next, and then up to board input. Thank you, Sheriff.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't prepare any comments today. I think it's a quick session about brainstorming and seeing where your direction is leading. I know we've had some offline conversations, Commissioner Salvis and Chair Roberts, about what to do next. What I told you both and the county administrator is that I think that we should conduct polling to determine what folks were thinking and the why behind the no. We do know that Measure 120 was also on the ballot, and that was taxes, and folks don't want a tax increase. And so really for us to determine what our next steps are, I believe we should ask voters. I don't think it has to be a humongous poll or a very expensive poll, but I do think that we should ask.
Anything else? Any other comments?
I think that's it. Brainstorm and figure out. I know that folks have ideas about where to go to next, and I am all ears with you all.
Okay. Yeah, one comment or suggestion I might have, and I think it would be fantastic if perhaps you and Gary could work together to really kind of form a committee. This is really going to be important to involve the community. And really, I think you're right on the money as far as polling. And what was the concern? What were they clear about the levy? You know, was there a lack of knowledge about it? I know talking to one of the gentlemen from the ELED, you know, he didn't feel like he had sufficient information about it. So it could be that people are just unaware of what this impact will be. But I think all of us recognize right now that it is tough economic times out there. I can't tell you how often I hear that, whether it's power bill, gas, people are financially struggling out there. And so I do think that's a concern. And so I think even before we really kind of make a decision of what to do is just try and do just what you're saying, ask a lot of questions, see what people want. Are they clearly clear about that? So that was one of the suggestions I kind of had. I wanted to make sure that, I'm not sure who had their up first. Is it okay, Martha? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of the factors that cause us to fail are actually out of our control as well. I think that the climate in the country right now with all the kind of chaotic things that are going on in the world have influenced people, and I think that the cost of living for them, I think it's just basically put them in a position where had all of this other dysfunction not be going on, I think that they, the levy would have had a chance. But there was something interesting that, and Paul, you alluded to this earlier today. I was talking to one of my friends in Lake Oswego who said, well, I'm not going to vote for that levy because, well, we're paying for other people to get law enforcement. You see what I mean? They didn't see it, and I don't know how true that is. This is a countywide measure, correct?
Correct.
With everything, but the perception out there is it's just for one little area, and I don't necessarily think that's true. But that's what I heard in my neck of the neighborhood. I don't know how we get around that, other than, to tell them, no, it's a comprehensive piece. But that evidently was a barrier to some people as well. So I certainly think that we should regroup and try and go out again. But the timing of when we go out again is in question, I guess. Do we do it in November, or do we wait and see what changes? Wait a little bit longer and see if we can do something maybe in the following May. I don't know the answer to that, but right now I think it's so unsettled out there that the electorate is cranky, and you're bearing the brunt of it right now. So, okay.
Thanks, Martha.
All right.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping we can actually talk some of this through today and next week before we jump to the conclusion of going out to polling, because I think that the questions that a pollster might ask, I think we can help frame that up. So I'm not adverse to doing polling, but I think right now, I think we ought to talk through what I think some of the obvious ones. For example, I put my hand on the material when we were looking at the polling and determining those options which to go for. And if you recall, some of the more expensive millage rates had a higher passage rate. And the reason they had a higher passage rate, because there was a value proposition there. They got something for something, right? And I think in this case, they saw an increase from 36 cents to 53 cents, and everything stayed the same, right? The same level of service. I guess, be very careful how I say this, but, I kind of said it earlier, but, I think we've uncovered a lot of solved a lot of financial issues, discovered a lot of financial challenges, and that delta of about $12 million between what 36 cents today gathers of 25-something million, 25,702, versus what 53 cents would that's about a delta of about $12 million essentially. So $12 million in part inflation, part contract, labor contract, and part I think maybe some not internal costs in CCSO not being calibrated or calculated in to the rate. And I guess again, Patrick's done a great job of discovering that and cleaning that up. So I guess that, when you're running for office, I do know personally, when you're running for office, a lot more people are coming at you. And this came up a lot of times. I know that Ben knocked on 5,000 doors. Because of my back, I wasn't able to knock on doors, so I'd like to know what he heard. But I heard a number of ranging things for, basically saying, geez, what happened, right? Why is it going up and everything's staying the same? So I think, ideally, we need to come clean with that, I think, to the voters. The other thing I think is I have a question here, two questions. Maybe you can help me out with. Patrick, in the levy, the current levy, how much of that is the body cams? Is it 4 million today, roughly? Just ballpark?
It's about 2 million per year.
It's 2 million for the levy?
The new
Okay.
contract, yes.
Okay. And where is in the budget, I'll be asking this tomorrow, but where in the budget is it civil or is it jail? Where are the courthouse deputies listed? They're not shown.
Civil.
in civil?
That's a civil program, is courthouse deputies, among other things. That's
And roughly how many, just rough, how many deputies are there?
I'd have to go back and look, because you have two different deputies in the courthouse. There's ones that do courthouse security, and other ones that do processing of papers and stuff for the courts. So we have two. I want to say, I think it's 16 and 6, I think, something like that. But I'd have to go back and look to get 16 and 6, but I'd have to go back and look and see
Okay.
the exact number.
And we added 13, right? As a result of the new courthouse, it required 13 more deputies, is my recollection last year. Did we not? Yep. So that's 13, and then in the old courthouse, we had how many? Just putting the math together so it reconciles.
So added the 13 was the FTE, but there wasn't enough money to pay for all those positions. So we had originally, I think in the old courthouse, I'd go back and look, but I think it was around 11. So we added 4 or 5, but we couldn't add the whole 13 because of, there wasn't enough funds to pay for everybody.
Okay. So anyhow, one angle where I'm getting at, one angle here is I'm wondering if we can somehow in a new levy, maybe one of the options is incorporate the other side of public safety, which is the courthouse, right? I will say, and I mentioned this to Sheriff Craig Roberts, Sheriff Roberts, here a couple months ago, and I know that Commissioner Helm was in the room when we both heard it, but one of the mayors publicly in a large setting kind of dissed the levy. And in other conversations, that mayor has also kind of poured cold water on the levy. I thought that was unfortunate. And I'm wondering if the argument, just seen an email that came in from that mayor here late last week, that the perception is that the unincorporated folks apparently aren't paying enough, and the incorporated people are paying too much, so why should the cities pay for public safety levy? And I argued, I shared this with Chair Roberts, says, okay, well, first of all, they don't know about the 57 cents more that the unincorporated area is paying. They don't know that the unincorporated area is paying 70 some odd cents for the levy, or for the ELED. So you got that. So they're paying more than $1 more than their cohorts in the cities. The other thing I think that I shared with Chair Roberts at the time, I don't think that the mayors are aware that the rising cost of the courthouse is now at the point, I mean, DA's office, the whole operation, that the funds that the base rate, tax rate essentially is paying is probably not enough money. So I don't think they're paying their full share, right? And one of the ideas I floated was, well, what if we did a study to demonstrate to the cities that, by the way, we're not keeping pace, and maybe you're not paying your fair share for, the DA's office and the courthouse, the full public safety arena. So all of that said, how we start out on this journey is, do we stay? Are we inclined to stay with the levy? My concern is, and again, the good work that Patrick's done, we can't go out for the levy at the existing rate without making some severe changes, reducing staff in that promise, because the levy is coming up 12 billion short for paying for all those positions. So I think we need to explore the options and say, is it the fact that, and here's the question, is it the fact that, and no doubt there's hard times, but did they do that because there was no value proposition, or did they do that because of just simply tight times? And I think the polling that we just last did on this levy showed that people would have paid more if they saw the value proposition. So I think we need to sort out what we're going to do if we're going to react to the assumption that, and maybe again the polling tests that, is it the lack of a value proposition, or is it tight times? And obviously it is tight times, but some things did get across the finish line. And it was tight times when we did the polling. Frankly, that wasn't that long ago we did that. So, and it showed that they would have paid more for more services, and as we went down in this particular option, there was the least support for it. So that's things I think we ought to contemplate.
All right, thanks. Commissioner Hill.
Well, I just think it's a number of factors. I just think there's so many things going on. And I remember several years ago, Happy Valley put out a levy, thinking that it was a continuation of their levy. And it just failed miserably. And they were surprised that it failed, like just the same thing as it was before. But they came back at the next election and they told people why they needed to vote and what they got for it. And it passed overwhelmingly. And I think it is the ROI, the what are we going to get with this if we pass it? There was confusion. I heard from a friend who got into a fight with her husband because they were reading the voters pamphlet book and interpreting it two different ways. Like, is it $200 more than we're already paying, or is it $200 total for the year? So they didn't even understand like what the total was going to cost them. So I think people are voting their pocketbooks right now, and it's just really tough times. But Washington County just passed the Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec district thing for $280 million. People voted yes. So I think it can be done. I just think we're going to have to work really hard on getting the message out, what people are going to get or what they're not going to get. They're not going to get an officer when they call. They're not going to get the kind of service that they have been used to getting. So I don't want to do the sky is falling, that kind of thing, because I know that happened during the Happy Valley thing. People were putting door hangers on people's doors, like, the world's going to end if you don't pass this levy. And it worked. Fear is a great motivator. So, but I also think it just made people really aware how important this is. And people say public safety is their number one concern. So if it is their number one concern, then they need to understand that it's costing more than it used to. So I think we should give it another go, but I think it's going to take a lot more work and a lot more door knocking for all of us, because we're all going to be out there in the fall. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to it, I think that we weren't in a war at the time. Fuel was not, when that first polling went out, fuel was not an issue, and a lot of other costs increased. And so I think that again, I kind of come back to really having community meetings, polling, surveys. We want to hear from the public. Do you want this or not? I think that you really have to be clear that if we do go back out, what will the change be, and that then you follow through with that, whatever that change is, and that's how you build trust. So we're not bluffing. We're just saying these are the facts, and you can support it or not. And really, I believe most importantly is having a lot of community meetings, input, and making sure that we're presenting, here's where we're at. Should we just cut budget, down to the bone and reduce services in these areas? Or what would you like? And so I think that's, again, I think that, Gary could put together and help kind of almost a communication plan of how we're going to reach out and seek that input. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's hard to know what those next steps are. I think the Board of County Commissioners needs to collaborate and get together and have another conversation. I don't know if I'm ready to make any decisions today. I can tell you this, when I knocked 5,000 doors, there was a lot of hesitancy at the door. I don't know what else was done. I know the CCPOA did a little bit of trying to get out the vote. I know I knocked 5,000 doors, and every door I said, oh my God, please help support public safety. I didn't see us actually talk to the voters. I didn't see anything much from the Board of County Commissioners. I didn't see anything from the Sheriff's Office. I saw a little bit from the CCPOA. I warned, not to say I told you so, but I told everyone so, that it is going to be an extra hard lift with the gas tax on the ballot, which was resoundingly and record-breaking no, right? And we saw many levies fail during that cycle. We knew that could we could get caught up in that sentiment. I think we did. But I think we need to actually have a strategy to talk to voters. We need to figure out what that is moving forward. I would have been nice if all government agencies were singing from the same songbook and that we were in unison together to try to protect the levy and public safety funding. That didn't happen. I wish that there would have been a cohesive message coming out from multiple elected entities. That didn't happen as normal. I don't know what funding was set aside to send out a mailer or an informational. That didn't seem to really happen. Yard signs were late, if they even came out. I know I spent actual real money on trying to protect the levy. I don't know what other people did, but I spent thousands on trying to protect the public safety levy. Not everybody did that, and not everybody showed up. And if we're gonna go to the voters and ask for a little bit more to right-size the public safety levy, I don't know, I think we have to do a better job at showing up. I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's probably more than a poll. So that would be my big concern. I'm very, very concerned moving forward with what that looks like. I think it's gonna be a deeper and longer conversation, at least with the Board of County Commissioners. I don't know what that is specifically moving forward.
Go ahead.
Commissioner West, while you were out, I brought up the issue of one of the mayors who had also additionally had sent an email late last week saying, I guess addressed to Chair Roberts, I believe, or all of us, I'm not sure, can't remember which, but, and I think it's an unsubstantiated claim that in my opinion, just knowing numbers roughly, that the cities are paying more than they should be for public safety, but are not calculating in, again, the fact that the rise of public safety, including the DA's office and the courthouse operations, is something that has crept up on all of us. So, and I brought up the 57 cents per thousand delta between the two tax rates and the 72 cents that the unincorporated area is paying for ELED, which I'm not sure they realize that's $1.29, that more that they're paying. So to ask for, I don't know, 14 more cents or whatever the number is, 40, 20 some odd cents more versus that, we have to dispel that. We can't have the cities against us. We're not going to pass this if we can't dispel that.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say that. So if we get better communication, I think my experience in the 20 some odd years, a lot of measures going back to the year 2000, I will tell you that in economic times, you got to work harder and you got to get your message out harder than in easy times. So,
I'd argue that
I passed that measure in 2009. It was very tough. They had DHM tell us, no way, 33% is the best you're going to get, Savas, and we passed it by 85% only because we worked it hard. We worked it door to door multiple times. So I believe it's possible. We just got to have the right message, and we can't have opposition from the cities or this unsubstantiated claims. Bringing this whole thing down.
But you agree that to get something like that over the finish line, the showing up that was necessary did not happen. I'm not pointing specific fingers, but that did not happen in a way that would have. I mean, 60-40 is resounding, also a resounding no. So that's my concern, is how we navigate that moving forward.
Martha?
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking, though, again, because what this friend said to me, I think what the disconnect is, the cities not only pay a county tax, which is lower, but they also have city taxes on top of it. So is that amount, so when you just look at overall the amount of taxes they're paying, I don't know if the city taxes, I don't know if they're more than what the unincorporated has to, or when you factor in the fact that they're also paying for a local government as well as a county commission. And we're in the situation where the unincorporated area depends on us for those services. So I guess I'd like to compare and see I'm paying property taxes and I'm paying county taxes in Lake Oswego, but I also have the sheriff's office, I have and our city helps with the library tremendously though, too. So I don't know, is that part of the issue, do you think?
I don't.
Because we go back and forth about who pays more, but there's another layer of taxes cities lay on people. just for the fact that they're incorporated, you know? But
You and I sat on C4 for all those years, and they were
Yeah, I
making
know.
those same claims. Oh, the cities are subsidized the unincorporated area. Well, if they did the math, they would see that wasn't the case. But
No, not
that's how the
really.
library district was formed, to resolve that,
That-
right?
But I think that kind of gives back to the messaging, and Gary and I have already talked about the mayors in that letter.
Yeah,
Like,
and
First of all, it
that's
was
part of the-
one mayor, right? It doesn't necessarily mean everybody's, and we are going to,
I've heard it from multiple mayors.
I've heard
Okay.
it.
Multiple
I've
mayors.
heard it
well,
from
I
more
have
than
only
one
heard it
mayor,
from one,
too.
so, okay.
Yeah.
But we had planned on bringing it up at one of the mayor's meetings.
Yeah.
And basically have a discussion about it, seek their input. We want them on our team as, if we decide we're going out, and what are those concerns they have, and bring them back. That's where I think it's kind of gathering all this information, taking all the input in, and kind of a strategic plan forward, whatever it might be. And so it could be some of the things you're pointing out. It could be this educational piece about, hey, the city pays this. I think it's easy to forget until you need a service, a particular service. One of the services that the sheriff's office does cost a fortune. People is a SWAT team. You have negotiators, you set up a perimeter, you have a ton of expensive equipment. It's high risk, high liability, and it goes on for hours. The goal is to negotiate your way out of that. You could go in there and create a crisis and get it over in a minute, but the goal is to get them to come out and peacefully without any harm. And so therefore, I just know I would cringe when I would see, oh my gosh, our SWAT calls are up, right? And because I knew that was a cost. Well, that's a big benefit to the city. And to have a team like that comes in, I show the dollar figures. So I see Gary over there giving me the hand signal. It's called this, your time, everybody. So I think that with that being said, I mean, we've kind of given you this, it's not like a decision to be made, right, Gary? I mean, this is,
Right, so you said 30 minutes, you started at 3:48 PM, so at 4:20 is 30 minutes. I think we have enough information. I'll ask for Tony to help me kind of just map out options on outreach, and we'll run it by the sheriff as well. And then next Tuesday, you're having a further discussion about this. Great. For next steps.
I have
Chair, no, go ahead. I would like to.
I have one ask, and if the sheriff's department would be willing, and that is, what would it look like to go out for the same amount? How many positions would have to be reduced, and how would you do that? My rough math told me 40 positions, using $300,000 per person, per deputy, if that's a good number or not.
I think we need some time to take a look at that. That was one of the things we discussed. Also looking at, if you're talking about the cities, and what is in it for the cities
Yeah.
to support the levy. And so a question, and we've talked about, is body-worn cameras. And the cities support funding their camera systems for their cities. When we started this, we were one of the first to have cameras supported by the levy. And so what does that look like? So we do have a top-of-the-line, we have a contract with Axon, but we can take a look at that and see what is the must-have for that contract. That may be one of the things you may decide that the county would pick that up. And then take a look at other packages. A lot of the levy supports the jail, which does support the cities. So I'd like to take a look at having the team separate some options for you to see what that looks like. And if the rate is the same, what would that support? What would it not support? And then you can make an informed decision there.
Yep.
And then one more thing I'd like to address, Commissioner West, I appreciate that you went door to door knocking on to get the word out, and I know you're also campaigning. But I want to thank our command staff who primarily funded the PAC, the Political Action Committee, that the sheriff runs. But I started this in the last levy cycle to get the word out. And I know we've had these conversations, and Chair Roberts understands because you talked about it's on the sheriff to get the word out, to do the thing. So I can tell you that our command staff, I appreciate, they gave us thousands of dollars for the PAC. I ran the PAC. We sent out 100,000 text messages. You know, if you run for office, that's very expensive. 150 yard signs. worked with the Clackamas County Peace Officers Association to get out those yard signs, to get a call script, and with thousands of likely voters to make phone calls, which phone calls I have made as well. 2,000 flyers, informational flyers, went door to door. So there was work behind the scenes, and the county did send out a mailer, and Chair, or County Administrator Schmidt can talk about that. So there was an effort, but it is a lot to get the information out. I know some of the information is confusing. The Secretary of State's office, we know that County Council, we work with them for the messages and to safe harbor information. It was very challenging this year, and I think people were somewhat confused. Is this a continuation? Is this a new, it is a new levy. And so it is a challenge that we'll have to face with any other levies that we put out. But I can tell you that we did what we could do to get the word out. And I know that you all committed to getting the word out about the levy as well. But it does take a lot of effort, a lot of money and time to reach the voters. And so we attempted to do that. And I appreciate our command staff who primarily gave the funding, the thousands of dollars to do that work.
Thank you. Commissioner Wells.
I agree with Commissioner Savas. That was a great question. That's one of my questions. The other thing that I think intersects with this is that I've heard from every single one of the cities that has a contract with the sheriff's office that a lot of displeasure, I'll leave it at that, a lot of concern, a ton of angst. All three of them. I was pulled aside at a gala with one of them. I've received multiple calls from Happy Valley and then also Estacada too, and Wilsonville, all three. And so they feel a level of sticker shock, a lack of communication. Now they're contemplating, really for the first time ever, truly going out on their own and disconnecting from our sheriff's department. That's concerning to me. I know this board doesn't really directly deal with the contracts with the cities, but that is a major issue. I appreciate the efforts that did come out on the levy from those that were involved in it. Many have shared concerns that it was lackluster in its effort still, and that it was not managed in a way that it would get the job done. And so I think that when we do those types of things, we need our cities on board. I'll reiterate that. And I'll reiterate, we have to make sure we are all in town, present, available, and visibly seen with all of our partners and mutual electeds rowing in the same direction. That also did not happen. I'm glad that some information got out, but unless it's done within a good strategic manner with all of your allies and supports that support public safety, you might as well light the money on fire because no one's gonna see it. And it's unfortunate because I am physically, I can feel the pressure of this not happening. The looming threat of this levy, once again, not being approved by voters, and knowing that this was probably the most difficult cycle to actually ask them, and that I don't believe that all hands on deck was a thing for this levy. And we're talking about real jail beds, real badges, real detectives, real actual supplies that is needed, that we have relied on for many, many years, is now potentially going to be missed. And from being the #1 law enforcement county of all big counties and the safest of them all, I believe if we don't right this ship together, that is in jeopardy. So I don't mean to be overly too passionate about this, but that's just the truth. If we can't figure out how to get on the same page with this levy moving forward, people will be hurt, businesses will be hurt, lives will be damaged. It will be less safe in Clackamas County. That's not alarmism, that's the truth. We've got to figure out how to deal with this big funding crisis. And I wish that it would have been a little different in its approach.
Yeah. Just want to add a couple comments to that. I too have heard from a couple of the cities regarding the allocated costs, which is the reason they wanted to look, because they felt like it was substantial. I think the next thing, this is where I truly believe in long-range planning. To get us on this is my philosophy. You can't just show up one day and say, hey, I need you to fund this, right? And this is a communication strategy that also has to start with us. And it's also telling our story of what are the accomplishments, what are the challenges, and really saying that in a number of platforms, all of us, making sure we have kind of the right talking points and going forward to kind of tell that story. And I think that that's where Gary, I'm very excited about, that we're doing a communication assessment to figure out how we can kind of, this should be an alarm to us, because if the SHS funding goes away, right? We've been doing great things with those dollars. But if that money, the very same thing, if we're behind the 8 ball on that, and we should be really, again, forward thinking about, look how many great things we've done. We want you to come down and see it, and the difference that we're making. So I know I want to cut this off because we're going long, but I just think it is, we really get a longer range plan to look down the road to how we can kind of work together to get this accomplished. So with that, Gary, do you have anything else?
No, you'll talk about this again next Tuesday.
All right, this will conclude, and thank you all for coming back after this long day. We'll conclude our meeting.